that we see democracy collapsing on itself. These are the stakes. Now you might be saying, well, who are you? Where are you basing this on? Why do you speak with such conviction? Well, first of all, I'm a child of God. Second of all, I grew up before Harvard and the Rhodes Scholar in a working class home in Schenectady where my parents worked for General Electric and supported me and hounded me and my little brother every single day on the importance of education. I was a latchkey kid, let myself in at 8 years old, and the rules were very, very, very strict. Do your homework, leave it on the counter, wait for us to come home. And we followed them. Back then, punishment was a little bit different. Timeouts were not in the lexicon of the general public. And if I wasn't studying, I was either on the basketball court, my first love, or I was in church every single Sunday. Every Sunday. I was in the choir, I was an usher. I had to say that I was raised in faith. I was raised in a belief in something higher. I was raised to look out for your neighbor. And that's always guided me in all that I've tried to do. And I didn't get my way into politics until I was 38 years old. 38. It took me 38 years to run for anything. Even in high school, college, nothing. I studied it. I was a political science major, a philosophy major. I loved studying the history of the civil rights movement, but I never quite got myself to believe that being inside of government really was the right place. I graduated from Colgate, played basketball there, studied overseas, came home and got my law degree, and then became a hip hop artist. That's right, hip hop artist. I did that for 5 years. I moved out to LA, and I chased a dream. Now, I wasn't there just to entertain, I was there to educate. I wanted to speak truth to power. At the time, there were things like the Iraq War, Katrina. If you were to go back and hear my music back then, that is what you would hear me talking about. Political corruption, economic inequality, sexism. These are the things that I rapped about in my music. Now, I came home because love brought me home. My wife, who I met in law school, we reconnected. I came back home, became a lawyer at a high-powered white shoe law firm for 7 years. So very different professional experiences, from a hip-hop artist to a corporate lawyer. All of it was preparation, which I did not know, for 2016. When 2016 happened, like a lot of folks, it bubbled up inside of me a calling to serve and to push aside all of my issues with government, to push aside the fact that I didn't think that you could get transformational bold change. I wanted more than I thought government could give. I realized that if you spend too much time focusing on the ceiling and how high, you might watch the floor bottom out. And I felt like that's what was happening. The floor was bottoming out, and we were backsliding. Because when I was growing up, you could live a story of upward mobility. I actually believed that I would have a better future than my parents. Now when kids grow up, they don't believe that at all. They're lucky if they end up just the same. Most of them might end up worse off. Think about that. They're growing up in an economy that is credit-centric and renter-centric. They don't own anything but owe everything. This is what we're passing down to the next generation. Is there any wonder why they're checking out or disillusioned with this thing we call the Graham Project, a grand experiment here in America? Where is that path to upward mobility? Now, when I ran in 2016, I ran in this is for everybody here who I know is a candidate who's trying to get in and push your way in difficult situations where you're not gonna just walk into a room and preach to the choir. When I ran, I left my law firm a year out from Macon Park. Another shocker to my parents, by the way. I moved back home and ran in a district with my wife, who's from Ulster County, grew up in Hour Park, in a 90% white district, the 8th most rural congressional seat in the entire country out of 435 seats in Congress, a seat no Democrat had ever won, and Trump won the district by 7 points just 2 years prior. So a lot of folks thought that someone that looked like me with a hip hop album had no chance. Some in my own party believed I had no chance. The folks in DC who picked candidates thought I had no chance. We won. We won because we talked about values. We met people where they were. We listened before we preached and talked. We engaged about the issues. We talked about family and community and faith. We talked about the things that people still want to feel like they can believe in and should believe in. And we fought to right the playing field because communities, whether they're urban, whether they're rural, are being left behind. They're being left unaccounted for. We're not investing them in meaningful ways, whether it was broadband or cell service, whether it's our mom and pop small businesses, whether it's a small family-owned farmers. There's a concentration of wealth and a concentration of power that is leaving too many folks behind, irrespective of race. It's economic exploitation at a degree that is not sustainable for any democracy. And it's not just nationally, it's right here in New York. We have the largest wealth inequality gap in the country, in this state. 1 in 5 of our kids in poverty. In this state, 2 out of 5 households can't afford basic necessities. In this state, a state governed by Democrats. Is there a reason we saw the biggest swing from left to right in the entire country right here in New York? People don't believe right now that the government is working for them. Now, when I ran, I did run in a district that ultimately believed that we could fight for them. We were able to deliver 10 bills that were signed by Trump in my first term in Congress. And I got reelected in 2020. I won by 12 points after winning by 7 points 2 years prior. And I outperformed Biden by 10 points. And I won in counties in 2020 that Trump won. Otsego County, I won by 12 points. He won by 7 points. Sullivan County, I won by 7. He won by 6. I won in counties no Democrat had ever won, ever. Rensselaer County. Matter of fact, Rensselaer County, I had lost by 10 points 2 years prior. 2 years later, I won it. So I am still very convinced in the power of persuasion that we can't cut through the divisiveness, but you gotta be willing to show up and listen. You gotta be willing to fight with love in your heart, not hate, not extremism, not divisiveness. And you gotta have a vision for the future. You gotta be able to talk about things that people really want to know you're gonna fight for. Whether it is housing that's truly affordable and not just affordable on a developer's terms, or whether it's healthcare that actually pushes the profit motive out of our entire system, or whether it's childcare that will pay our childcare workers the value of their work, or whether it's making sure we don't just have a minimum wage, but a livable wage. Basic, bedrock, compassionate, fair principles that we stand on and do not compromise on, including protecting our immigrant communities that are under siege, rather than being afraid of being called soft on immigration. I don't care. I don't care at this point, nor should we ever care what the other side is going to do to exploit our position. Because if you care, you're already revealing your compromise in your conviction. If you care, you're compromised. I don't mean care about other perspectives. What I mean is care about how your position will be exploited by political foes. There's a difference. You care about everybody in the circle of democracy. But when you have folks who are going to take your words out of context or vilify you for what you say, you cannot shirk in the face of that. You must lean in the face of that. And now we're being tested more than ever. Now we're being tested more than ever to stand on our values and our principles. We cannot allow more and more and more wealth to be concentrated in the hands of a few and big corporations and not be willing to ask ourselves, should they not pay more? We can't be willing to point to DC and say, look how bad it is when they want to cut Medicaid, they want to cut SNAP, and they want to do that on the backs of the working poor, but then not look in our own backyard and say, what are we doing to make sure we account for the growing economic inequality all across this state and this country? There's a moment of accountability nationally when it comes to the politics of our party, because we've left a lot of communities behind. So we cannot be the fighters we want to be just by fighting against Trump. We've got to be willing to fight for for what we believe in. And that means being willing to sacrifice yourself in the process. It's the last point I'll make. When I got into politics, I didn't know much about the inside. Like I said, I was late to the party. And since I've been in, I realized there's a lot of power dynamics that happen inside of politics. A lot of gatekeeping, a lot of party bosses. We saw some of this play out even in the presidential, the way the party leadership kind of just felt a little bit too uncomfortable to call out the fact that Biden may not have been the best candidate. You saw the party sort of protecting itself at the people's expense. That's a problem. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. When the party starts to turn inward for the sake of its own self-preservation and is willing to put us in the center of a storm that can only be described as an existential threat to our very democracy, while saying it is an existential threat to our democracy, literally the same people saying he is a threat are walking us into that threat. That is a problem. I said Biden should step aside. A lot of folks didn't. And I caught a lot of political hell for saying that. Because at the end of the day, if you're in this game, if you want to even call it a game, it shouldn't be about politics. Politics should be secondary to the work that you do. Morality should be the foundation. Your conscience should be the foundation. And the reason why Trump is so successful right now, and he is successful, is because he's not inhibited. He's uninhibited. He's not beholden to a party. He owns his party, unfortunately at our expense, but he does. He transcends the party dynamics. He's a chaos agent. The problem is that he uses that independence for destructive ends and for self-service. What we need right now is the opposite of that energy. Not politics as usual, but actually a moral compulsion to fight that is also uninhibited. But rather than being destructive, it is constructive. Rather than being fueled by hate, it is moved by love. It seeks to unite, not divide, but it is just as raw, just as potent, if not more, because it is rooted in God. It is rooted in truth. It is rooted in our shared humanity. If we really believe in this thing we call democracy right now, and we really know the threat that is lurking, my call to all of you this evening is to elevate the bar for what kind of leaders you want to take on this fight. What do we need to take on this fight? Because I know the threat, and I know how bad it is. And it's not enough just to resist. We have to work for and fight for who we fundamentally are. And that starts in every nook and cranny of this state. So to all the candidates out there who are gearing up, getting out there, putting yourself out there, making yourself vulnerable, doing the work every single day, remember to lead with love. Remember to listen. Remember to stay engaged. Everybody in this room, wrap your arms around them. Support them. Lift them up. This is not easy work. This is hard, demanding, grueling, sacrificial work. This is public service. Service. So thank you all for the work that you all do. I appreciate you every single day. Getting up,